All right, hi, this is JR. I'm with Dan, and we are looking at an article that I just wrote earlier today. It's called Making Friends with the Hysterias of Confusion, Grief, Shame, and Blame. Comments on the title before we get any further. Dan?
No, I mean, just, as opposed to living in denial, I guess making friends with these things could be a good idea. That's about it. I do like the title.
um, okay, cool. Yeah, being aware of these things, I mean, the idea of making friends with them is somewhat ironic. That's part of the idea of what as an introduction to what I'm going to share with you. Why is this of interest? Why have we spent so long talking about these kind of things, and why would someone spend so much time being attentive to hysteria in general and specific things like shame and grief? And what does that mean? Why am I saying that those are types of hysteria? So, of course, I'm going to explore that further, but if you want to make any introductory comments about you or about what I've said so far, feel free to interject at any time.
Well, I think that people would talk about these things if they're having troubles making friends with them. I mean, if they're, focusing on grief and shame, or maybe even if they're unconsciously focusing on these things and not really aware of their hysteria or their repeated behavior or, repeated attempts to blame for their confusion, you know.
Okay, so you've already brought up the idea of confusion can be a predecessor to blame. So we have some experience of confusion, then blame can be an outcome of that. Um, if someone is struggling with blame, whether they're the recipient of blame or the person who's actually casting blame a lot, like either one of those could be um, a type of struggle or challenge. So I could have called this something like making friends with the challenging experiences of confusion, grief, shame, and blame, and that would have been totally appropriate. I wanted to be a little bit more sensationalist, maybe, and call them the hysterias. Um, and I think it's a pretty appropriate, label. So, any comment on that before I proceed?
Yeah, I know. I think it's an appropriate label as well.
Yeah, and just as a background for people who don't know Dan or maybe even don't know me, he and I have been talking about these issues for maybe not 2 years, but close to 2 years. We've been talking about some of these kind of things quite frequently. Um, so I've got a link that I would recommend that people actually click so they can follow along not only with the words that I'm going to be reading, but also to see the pictures. We've got a bunch of pictures, mostly of kids, or maybe all of kids. Um, so that first picture is looks like chocolate cake on the eyebrow. I think that's my favorite part of that picture. Do you see that one, Dan?
Oh yeah, chocolate cake everywhere.
um, so in the course of human events, people may notice preferences and even expectations. Like I like chocolate instead of you know, um, carrot cake, because carrots, that's for rabbits, right? Um, People might have expectations. People might have preferences. So these are just basically normal things. Everybody's going to have that at some point in their life. We're going to develop an awareness of preferences and expectations in ourselves and in other people. One of the most common ways to notice the presence of an expectation. Dan, anything come to mind if you haven't read? What's the most common way to notice the presence of an expectation?
When the expectation is disappointed, I guess would be when you have a contrast.
Yeah, exactly. There's a contrasting experience between whatever was expected and then whatever actually happens. And one of the things that can go with that is disappointment. It is possible for us to have like um, a negative expectation and for it to be violated and us to be pleasantly surprised, But anyway, one of the most common ways to notice the presence of an expectation is when something else happens other than what was expected. So, in contrast, when nothing's expected and something unfamiliar happens, Dan, what's the experience that goes with that?
Well, I would say that there's certainly an opportunity to be surprised and curious, and maybe even potential opportunity to learn.
Are you reading ahead, or are you just answering off the top of your head?
I think a little of both, but yeah, I was reading that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's basically the same thoughts that I had. So
Well, I'm in that same answer either way, just to be clear. I mean, close to that same answer either way.
yeah, I mean it's these are I want to actually digress. I think I'll finish this one little thought, but I'm going to say a general comment. So if nothing's expected and something unfamiliar happens, surprise, or your alertness or your focus goes over to that unexpected thing, and then maybe curiosity. If there's interest, then the curiosity persists over time. You explore, you experiment, and boom, you learn something possibly. But when something's expected and it does not happen, then that's a different thing. You got an expectation, and then like Dan said, a contrast to what was expected, and that is a different thing than just surprise. So before we go on to the picture of below the picture of the kid with the fork and knife who's ready for some food right now. Um, um, a lot of what I explore are things that you might call obvious or self-evident. So, Dan, would you agree that a lot of the things that I focus on are pretty obvious?
Yes, I think that when we're like certainly when we're our curiosity is piqued, then these things are obvious. But if in a situation where we might not have interest in something, then we might not really be paying attention to these obvious things. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But,
So if we were paying attention, we could notice a lot of things. They're not hard to notice, right? So I had in mind like to say, and here's what's unusual. I'm going to take things that are pretty obvious and pretty easy to notice, and I'm going to, I've written them down. I'm going to share them with you, and there's a value that you can get from this as far as, well, I could ask you to just speculate or report on your past experience. I state things that are in and of themselves self-evident, and how is that valuable, or how could that be valuable?
in the state of confusion,
Okay.
to kind of have like a guideline or a map to kind of bring clarity.
Okay, so to just kind of get grounded in a few points of reality, a few observable things. So if there's a background of confusion or even distress, just to like get related to some basic foundations can be useful in terms of ending confusion, like verifying what are my presumptions and what do I actually observe. So if my presumptions and my observations are incongruent, well, I'm going to go with the observations and drop the presumptions. That's a normal thing to do, right?
Right, absolutely.
That's actually not the answer that I was thinking of, but that's absolutely accurate. Like in an individual conversation, you could just talk to somebody. If I'm confused, I could call up Dan and say, "Hey, I want to go over some things, and maybe you can help me come to clarity." And all Dan might do is ask me questions, but then in answering the questions, I have to pay attention and just state, what do I observe. Beyond that, in a presentation like this, I'm actually taking a sequence of self-evident, obvious things, and I'm putting them together in a way that you might have never thought of, or you might not have thought of lately, or not in that whole series of connections. So I'm making connections in the service of promoting calm, back to the title, making friends with something, making friends with these human experiences, but also promoting functionality, promoting power, freedom, clarity, calm, freedom in the sense of if I experience a hysteria or if I witness a hysteria in somebody else, do I have a lot of confidence and clarity about how to explore other experiences? So hysteria might be something I want to end, right?
Yes.
And it's also, of course, possible that I might want to promote hysteria, but we're not really going to get into that in this presentation, but it is possible. Um, so I want to be able to be powerful and offer alternatives to other people when they're in mild or even other kinds of hysteria, other degrees of hysteria, whether it's mild or medium or whatever. So I'm stringing together a variety of self-evident things, and the idea is that this is going to promote happiness. Not only are we going to be able to laugh at ourselves, which I guarantee will happen as we go through this, but in addition to the immediate joy of it, I'm actually setting up a program, you might say, or a training where once I've set up this sequence, then at any time, if you find yourself somewhere in that sequence, you're going to have a context of what came first and what comes later, and it's going to allow you to move through potentially challenging experiences more quickly. Does that make sense, Dan?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so if I'm in the middle of frustration, I could stay there for a week, hour, or maybe based on what I'm about to talk about now, the experience of frustration, I would immediately go, okay, this is frustration. I know what fits with that. I know what my alternatives are as far as the future. This is eventually going to resolve into, you know, I can throw out an answer. Dan, this is definitely, you know, from prior conversations, but what's, I love to do this kind of interactive thing. What would be a natural positive outcome that would result from frustration? Somebody experiences frustration, really gets, damn, I'm just frustrated. And then what can happen as a favorable outcome?
Well, we can learn how to deal with frustration only by experiencing it and paying attention to it. We can learn how to get better dealing with it. So I would say a positive outcome would be learning to better deal with frustration instead of banging our silverware on the table because we want food.
Yeah.
We maybe can learn to, you know, wait for the food because banging our silverware is not going to get there any faster. So, you know, we can learn from frustration, and that, to me, that's a positive outcome.
Okay,
maybe we don't see that. Maybe we don't see that in the middle of the frustration, of course, but you know what I mean.
So to quickly go from I'm frustrated to I'm doing something that's not working well for me. How about I just, in this case, be patient? Or how about I politely ask for, hey, how long do you think it is going to be until you bring the food or whatever, right?
Right.
In dealing with other people who are experiencing frustration, this is definitely digressing from, of course, the planned presentation, but if somebody else is experiencing frustration, do you have any sense of what's a positive potential for, you know, how to interact with them and where you could lead them?
Absolutely. I mean, if we see their frustration, you said, you know, promoting hysteria is not a good idea. Well, and, you know, I don't know if you said that way, but you said you want to go over that in this conversation. But I think that's important because by putting someone's focus or attention on their hysteria, I think eventually, you know, they can learn from that, you know, and see things that maybe they can't see for themselves. You know what I mean?
So you can help them move from frustration to learning. So if I take everything you just said and really shorten it, somebody's experiencing frustration, can I or can you help them go from frustration to learning?
Right.
Because one of the things with frustration is typically somebody's doing something over and over and it's not working and they keep doing it and it's still not working. And they're just like, you know, there's kind of an obvious thing there, but have they really learned what's right in front of them? And maybe, you know, another person can assist them in having a rapid learning process or an efficient learning process. Also, we could, if we're interacting with somebody who's frustrated, it's also possible to promote their frustration or hysteria or annoyance accidentally without knowing that that's what we're doing. And that can lead to all sorts of things. Again, that's outside of the scope of this presentation, but certainly something that people can relate to. Like if somebody else is frustrated, I know they're frustrated, and then I'm trying to interact with them. I'm trying to help them or rescue them or help them learn efficiently. Well, if it's not working, whatever I'm doing, then at least I can be aware of, am I helping? Am I hindering? And, you know, Am I causing further frustration? So alertness and attentiveness is major foundation to this whole process. Any comment on that?
Yes, I mean, I'm just to say that, yeah, I agree with all that. Yes.
Okay. So now let's go back to under the picture of the young child there pounding the table or yelling. I would imagine they've been pounding the table with, you know, the utensils in each hand there, the metal on the wood, clang, clang, clang. Where is my food? All right.
And you can see how, like, that's kind of like the kid is frustrated, but he's also trying to spread that frustration. I guess, you know, because he's frustrated, he doesn't really know how to deal with it because he's a child. I think what he's trying to do is spread that frustration to others, but that doesn't work. And I think, you know, he'll learn that as he gets a little bit older, like 38 or whatever.
Right. Within the next few decades, he'll learn that might not be the best way to go. Yeah. So he's calling for help. You know, he's calling attention to himself when he's screaming in frustration. So it's natural to go through basically all of these things: confusion, grief, frustration, every possible human experience. It's natural for somebody to have it at some frequency. Eventually, inevitably, you're going to have some of these, or inevitably you're going to have all of these. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, but that's what's going to happen. So the frustration where you go and you pound the table, it's calling for help, really, right? You get that?
Yes, I do think it's calling for help, but I also think unconsciously, I think it is also, like in this case, he's trying to frustrate whoever's, you know, not getting the food there in time, right? I mean,
right.
So there's that element also in there, I think, you know?
Well, he's intentionally, like, you might say, even if he's not intentionally trying to annoy somebody, he's going through a distress process and he's calling attention to himself. And if he has to, like, I think about tugging on the pants or the skirt or something of an adult when you're a toddler or something. When someone's a toddler, they're going to tug, and if that doesn't work, they're going to tug harder. And if that doesn't work, they're going to kick them in the shin. And if they're choking, then you do what it takes to get the attention of the adult to help you, be able to breathe. In that example, right?
And actually, hysteria, an extreme form of hysteria, it can get to the point where you're having troubles breathing. You're talking about hyperventilation and stuff. And of course that's extreme hysteria, but right. So that's certainly possible. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, well, when we get into a loop or a snowball of distress, that can lead to panic. We can get hyperventilation, and if we're aware of that, one thing we can do is slow down our breathing, or in particular, slow down the exhalation. And I don't want to get into the science of why that works, but it's a really simple experiment. If someone else is in distress or just stressed, to slow down the exhalation process or the entire breathing cycle, to exhale less frequently, less often. Just doing that can promote relaxation, calm, alertness, set somebody up for better sleep. Whereas if they have distress and hyperventilation, then they're going to pump out more stress hormones, probably. So there's physiological cycles that I don't want to talk about in this presentation, but Daniel's aware of those, and that's right on that tangent is definitely relevant. But let's leave it for now. So back to the picture of the kid pounding the table, waiting for food. Give me my food. Give me my food. Hey, right? So that child might have an expectation. The expectation hasn't been fulfilled, and they're going to voice that. They're going to express or communicate the frustration. So instead of ignorance simply being replaced with the new stimulus or perception, like you don't expect food, there's no food, or whatever, it's just a surprise, that would be ignorance being replaced with a new awareness, a new perception. But when there's already an expectation, like an expectation of food, then that's quite distinct from ignorance. It's not just, oh, what's going on? I don't know. What's going on? Let's pay attention. Let's learn. When there's an expectation, there's and that implies that there's already interest. So I want food. I'm hungry, for instance. If someone is not interested in something, then why form an expectation about it? You're going to eat every day. You're going to have 3 meals or whatever. People form expectations about something like eating because they think of eating as what? Important. It's interesting to them. I want certain things. I want a certain frequency of food at certain times of the day, and all that kind of stuff. So is all that generally clear? Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So now we've got the picture of the kid with the orange shirt looking down at the little macaroni and cheese thing, and he's not looking with tremendous interest, actually. He does have that really cool spoon, which is the airplane spoon, So, open the hangar. Here comes the airplane. All right. Yeah. But so there could be an expectation. It could be violated, or so when an expectation is violated, which is inevitable, eventually, if you have enough expectations, some of them are going to be violated. So when that happens, there can be confusion. The kid can be like, well, this isn't what I thought was macaroni and cheese. I wanted the other brand. This is a different brand. This isn't mac and cheese. Right? I mean, seriously, that's like the kind of thing that a kid would say, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So there can be confusion. An expectation is violated, there can be confusion. Now, confusion cannot arise without a pre-existing expectation that was erroneous. Clear?
Yes.
Total ignorance can lead to surprise, but total ignorance cannot lead to confusion. It just doesn't work that way. Surprises can be scary. Surprises can be fun, pleasant surprise, many other things, but unless there's an expectation, a surprise will never lead to confusion. So, next picture looks like somebody was unwrapping a gift, and they like what they got. You see that picture, Dan?
Yes.
This is perfect. What is it? Have you ever seen a kid be like, "Oh, this is awesome"? What is this?
Oh yeah. So whereas they have their reaction kind of planned out before they open whatever they're opening. You know what I mean? And I've seen that. Yes.
Yeah, this is for me. Yeah. What is this? So, expectation is required to produce confusion. So only expectation can lead to confusion. Something is not how I expected it, and I don't know why. So it's not just something's not how I expected it. There's got to be, a sense of not knowing. You're not really clear what's incongruent between your expectations and your observations. That's called what? What is that called? What is that called, Dan?
Confusion?
It's called no, it's called befuddlement, or what? Confusion. That was it. Okay. So when there's an expectation plus an awareness of the violation of some expectation, but no further clarity yet, that's called confusion. Someone may not even know which expectation has been violated. They really are, disoriented, right?
Yes.
So that confusion can lead to seeking clarification. You can just, you call out, "I'm so frustrated," or "I'm confused," or you can, kind of like look over and recount your things, and you stick your fork in the macaroni and cheese and see, is this responding? What is this? This is like rubber. This is cold. This is not right. This needs to be warmed up, or whatever the issue is. So you start exploring. So confusion can lead to exploration, experimentation, seeking clarification, maybe just in communication with other people, asking for clarification. And confusion can also lead to the refining of expectations. I might dismiss some presumptions. I might get more precise. This is mac and cheese. It's just really cold, and I think I'd rather have it warmed up. Or maybe I'd rather feed this to the dog, and you know what? I don't want mac and cheese, or whatever it is, right? So the confusion can lead to a very distinct pathway, which we will explore now. Brief. It's somewhat brief, but knowing Dan and I, we might go on for a few extra minutes making jokes. You wouldn't do that, Dan. You wouldn't distract me, would you? Okay. Next picture is like a little girl on her maybe her father's arms, or her father's shoulder, and the little girl is in distress. She's not just confused, she needs help. She needs daddy's attention or something like that. So here's the scenario. I expect something. Something else happens. I'm confused. In other words, I notice that I was already confused about what would happen. And then later I suddenly recognize my own prior confusion or my own erroneous expectation. Is that logically clear, Dan?
Yes,
okay.
Yes, it is.
So I expect something else happens, I'm confused, or I notice that I've been confused for a while, and suddenly I'm like, oh, or I've been mistaken for a while, and then I experience confusion. So what next? Huh?
And that's where you can get into the shame and the blame and the cognitive dissonance, is when you actually recognize that you were already confused prior to your expectation being disappointed. Yes, I understand that.
So this brings up, how do I relate to my own confusion, my error, my inaccuracy, my violated expectation? Yes, I had an expectation. Yes, it was violated. Okay, now what? There's a lot of different ways it could go, but one pathway that Dan mentioned there is, we could call it distress. In the title of this article presentation, I used the term hysteria. So is it okay to experience occasional confusion?
Of course.
Dan says, of course. Is it to be expected that any human would occasionally experience confusion?
Absolutely.
Is it also occasionally expected that some instance of confusion eventually is going to be overwhelming, what we would call overwhelming? Yeah. It can be terrifying. It can be embarrassing. It can be, you could say, shameful. It could be pretty much whatever, right? So the next picture is this kid. Oh, the kid in the purple. The nap expectations thing. And that kid looks like they might be sad or frustrated or confused or disappointed, some set of things. But they're putting on this kind of, I'm not going to cry. I might yell. I might blame somebody. Can you see that forming in their face, Dan?
Yes.
Sometimes an experience of confusion from an unfulfilled expectation or violated expectation may lead to embarrassment. But I don't want to cry, and this must be somebody else needs to change here, right, Dan?
Absolutely. The whole world.
The whole world should change. That's
everybody but me, because I'm perfect. So.
Well, that's what I said, though. How can you be perfect if I'm perfect? All right, whatever. So sometimes an experience of confusion can lead to embarrassment. Embarrassment is related to shame, kind of really similar words, right? And all of that means that I experience fear. Well, Dan, what's shame or embarrassment mean? If you haven't read ahead, if you have, you can read it. But anyway, what does shame and embarrassment mean?
What does it mean? I mean, I guess
it's a type of fear. I'm going to give you that hint. What kind of fear is it?
Well, it's a fear that, first of all, it's a fear that's based on other people's perceptions of you. I mean, I would say.
Okay.
Keep going. Because if you're not actually concerned about other people's perceptions, then you wouldn't really be embarrassed or you wouldn't feel shame. So
I've noticed that most 13-month-old children just aren't ashamed.
Right.
Okay, go ahead. Exactly. Keep going.
I don't know, that was the end of my thought.
Okay, so there's a concern for social perception, but it's more than that. Can you go a little further? Why am I concerned? If I'm embarrassed, why am I concerned about social perception? What's really the issue? What am I really afraid of?
Looking bad to others. I mean.
Okay, and then anything else?
Disappointing others? I don't know.
Okay, and if I disappoint them, then?
It could have a negative effect. I don't.
A negative effect. So I use the term punishment. But it could be a loss of a reward, a loss of a benefit. So if I'm experiencing shame or embarrassment, I've told you the story, Dan, of me running off stage crying, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So many, many times I've performed on stage various kinds of stages. You know, people have clapped, people have not had much response. People have, you know, um, one time, oh God, this is a digression, but anyway, people have had very favorable responses. I'll, I'll cut off that tangent. People have had very favorable responses. People, I don't know people actually booing really, but I've definitely had negative experiences where I was scared, right? So I was anxious, stage fright. I've actually run off stage crying, I believe, one time in my life. But I've been on stage a lot. And, you know, generally people have responded favorably, you know. Um, I guess that's kind of related to the fact that I keep going on stage because, you know, I get a good response. So I practice more and then I go do more stuff and people clap more.
I was just going to put that together for you. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you had a lot of favorable responses. That keeps you going back for more. Also keeps you, you know, learning, you know, experimenting and learning as well.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, well, what is working? You know, if I play a lot of my stage time is as a musician. So if I do certain songs that are really going, you know, well, people are really responding well. They're dancing and they're clapping and they're cheering and they're drinking a lot or whatever my whatever my feedback things are that I'm noticing. Um, then I'm going to keep playing those songs that people really respond to well, probably. You know, this is a typical thing for a bar band or really any musician, even if it's a original song or, you know, Beatles song or whatever, you know, song. If my version of it is getting people to respond well, then I'm either going to do that same thing again or maybe other songs by that artist or other songs that are like that. I'm going to, you know, oh, the crowd really likes that kind of thing. Now I'll try La Bamba, see if they like that, you know? So that's, I'm just being straight. Like that's, you know, bands have set lists typically, Dan, in case you didn't know this. I mean, you probably do. But based on the response that people have, people will make requests. And also the band members or the solo performer will start to realize this is what's working tonight. I'm going to do more of that, you know?
I think that goes, you know, goes along with human behavior in general, not just as a band.
Sure.
With a set, you know, whatever is working, you would obviously, and you know, try again or use it again. Whatever doesn't work with in communication, you know, you might consider not necessarily doing that, you know, with certain people anyway. So I think, you know, if we generalize it, it's over all human behavior, not just for a band, of course, you know.
Absolutely. So we've got, you know, we get encouraging responses and discouraging responses. So if we're interacting with other people, one other person, lots of other people, we get encouraging responses or neutral responses maybe, or discouraging responses. And back to shame and embarrassment, there's a concern for a negative response, a repulsive response, not just that other people will be disappointed, but there will be consequences for their disappointment. They might discontinue rewards or reduce awards, or they might even punish. So if I'm experiencing shame, I'm expecting or imagining a future that I'm afraid of in which other people perceive me in a unfavorable way and then take action based on their perception. That's an important detail. So they throw beer bottles up on stage, or they go complain to the management and say, this band sucks. Do not hire them again. I'm never going to come to your bar again if they're playing. You know, you got it?
Right, yes.
So we're concerned about people's behavioral reactions. We're concerned about the results we get, not just that people are disappointed. If I go on stage and there's 900 people in the audience and 45 are disappointed, do I really care? No. Unless they report it to the management, like, this is horrible, I'm never coming back, and they sue the company or whatever. You know, there are things that are so extreme that I would care, but in general, if I've pleased 800 people, 55 didn't really care one way or the other, and 45 really didn't like it, I just pleased a huge, you know, majority of people, so I can consider that good. So I'm not trying to avoid disappointment entirely. That's ridiculous. But if there's a negative reaction, that has or negative consequence. I don't get hired again. Those kind of things. That's something I could be concerned about. I could be embarrassed for my band. I could be embarrassed for myself. So if I'm concerned and afraid about negative results relating to other people's perceptions of me, then those results in the most extreme form would be social shunning, which is like not getting hired again or even worse, and even violent attack. Ultimately, personal safety is one of the most important priorities that somebody could ever focus on, right? My personal safety or the personal safety of the whole band or whatever, right? So we're concerned about violent attack. We do not want people throwing beer bottles on stage because I'm not wearing armor, right? I'm not in a freaking tank there to expect people throwing hard glass, I don't want to get hit by that. So it's actual fear of injury, fear of financial injury, social injury, physical injury. So you know what I mean by all that, like social injury. That's all clear?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So if I have shame, if I have embarrassment, that's just a fear about a possible future thing. So I've back to my thing. I got it. I had an expectation. It was violated. I'm confused. And then I'm embarrassed, but I'm confused. Okay. What do I do next? Do I withdraw or flee? That is a common thing. If I'm embarrassed, I run off stage crying. That would be a very predictable response, right?
Yes.
So what if that simple response of withdrawing, what if that simple response to stress of withdrawing is not available to me? What if there's bodyguards on, or like there, there's cops on either side, and I'm like, oh, what was that movie? Do you know the movie I'm thinking of? It was like George Clooney and the singing, they're like they're in Tennessee or something. Do you know the movie?
I do not know.
Oh Lord, Man of Constant Sorrow.
I've not seen it. No.
That's not the title. That's the song they're singing.
Okay.
I don't remember the name of the movie. If you just type that into the internet, we could find the name of the movie. But anyway, these guys are like they're escaped. I don't know. They're not slaves. They're escaped prisoners, like from jail. So I'm gonna type in. I'm gonna find the name of the song here. Apparently, Bob Dylan recorded it. I didn't know that, but not important. Man of Constant Sorrow, George Clooney. What do we get? Oh, brother, where art thou?
Okay, I've heard of that movie, but I've not seen it now.
From the year 2000. Well, I've seen it a couple times, which means that I liked it. So the scene is these guys. This is interesting because it's like they're singers, and there's three guys, I believe, and they're up there singing their songs. The crowd loves it, but they're escaped convicts, or escaped, suspects or whatever. So there's cops gathering up on either side of the stage and at the exits, and they, even though the crowd's liking their singing and performance, they're seeing, okay, we're in physical danger here. We're going to get arrested, and we're going to get taken back to the coal mines or whatever, where we hit the stones with our picks. It's like the slave labor chain gang. This was from the 19th century. So can you conceive of all that, Dan?
Yes.
So they're in that situation, and they're scared. So what if simple response to stress of fleeing isn't available? How else could someone promote safety? Like, take that scene. Like, what would be something that a really intelligent, person would do in that situation? Can you imagine what they would do to try and promote their safety? Go ahead, Dan.
I don't know. Get the crowd in an uproar.
Get the crowd in an uproar, right? So if you dive into the crowd and then pull the fire alarm and then yell, "Someone's got a gun," or whatever, right? You could actually cause enough chaos that you might be able to increase your chances of escaping, right?
Right.
So that would be an example of faking or fraudulent, misleading people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I have here in the article was, do I fight to promote safety? Like, do I get a gun, or do I, try and I maybe knock down, the start a little fire or whatever, and do something that's in the spirit of increasing the risk of the threats to me. So I'm gonna start a fire. I'm gonna threaten them with fire. I'm gonna set off the siren, and you turn out the lights. Right? That's another great thing. You turn out the lights and try and run. So
punch a cop in the face. Yeah.
I tend to think of that as not the ideal solution, but maybe that would work better for you. Um, uh, do I freeze? So that's also a normal response. If I can't withdraw, I might just freeze, and I might hope that um, I'm somehow rescued. Like the lights go out, or the crowd rushes the stage, and it's for whatever reason I get saved somehow. So
it's
I might
kind of
just
like running into a bear in the middle of the woods. You might just freeze and hope the bear just walks away, which
right.
certain bears that'll work.
Maybe the bear won't see you, right? So I picked this for whatever reason. I picked this stage fright kind of scene, or this on stage kind of scene. But yeah, a bear in the woods while driving. You see that the other car is coming into your lane, but you don't do anything different. You don't swerve. You just watch, and you just wait for a minute. That patient response, right? You could say, or you might literally freeze, where you're like not even conscious of the ability to swerve. You just literally are so tense that you freeze, right?
Yeah.
And I also mentioned faking. Do I fake to promote safety? Like saying fire, right, when there's no fire. Of course, I could set a fire, which would be a distraction. So there's a variety of responses that are predictable to fear. So we've covered a few of them. But the one I wanted to cover most here is illustrated in that next picture, the little boy and the little girl. Do you see the one I'm talking about, Dan?
Yes.
They're engaging in animosity towards each other. So we're setting up the topic of blame. A common reflex for someone who's confused and then embarrassed about being confused is to cast blame. Blame can have an element of antagonism, as in a fight response to the fear or the shame. So blame could just be, I think that, you guys should be arresting Boss Hogg, because he's the one who's really behind this. It's not Bo and Luke Duke. It's I now that I've made these references, it's a little weird, but I'm referring to the Dukes of Hazzard TV show from the, what was that, the 70s, the 80s, late 70s.
Yes.
So you could, they could actually cast blame in a very straightforward sense, but in a hysterical blame, you're just going to blame whoever's around. That's a normal, predictable response. So there can be an element of antagonism, and there's an element of hysteria. So blame is a type of complaint like this. The only reason that blah, blah, blah is because the weather is so unusually blah, 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 blah. So that's blaming the weather. And that's perfectly, predictable that people would occasionally do that, or frequently do that. That's basically a request for attention and sympathy. Got that, Dan?
Yes.
Okay. So is the following. It's still a kind of blame. The only reason that blah, 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 blah is because of whoever I blame for this confusing and embarrassing and frustrating development. And who I blame is blah, 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 blah. What?
I said myself.
Oh, you're okay. You could blame yourself. That's an interesting twist, that you can actually self-direct blame, but that's actually kind of off the subject of what this particular presentation. But I actually thought you said Satan. You said myself, but I thought you said Satan. You know who's to blame? It's the devil. And that also is understandable that people would say things like that. I mean, haven't you heard that a few times? If people do it over and over, then you can notice that pattern. Go ahead, Dan.
Talk about some of the worst hysterias. I think that religion, certainly you can enter into that conversation. Not that we're going to go into it, but yes, absolutely, we can blame. Pass the buck to the devil for everything that goes wrong, you know?
By which Daniel means Obama. All right, moving on. No, or the Republicans, right?
Yes.
Or the Muslims, or the I always, you know who I blame the most, Dan. You know who I always what?
Libertarians.
No, the toddlers. The problem with the world today is the toddlers are they're so immature these days. What's it with the kids these days, you know?
Exactly.
Libertarians, though, are a lot like toddlers, so I get what you're saying. All right. um, next picture is two little blonde-haired girls in green shirts and one little blonde-haired boy in the white shirt, and one of the girls is pointing at the boy, pointing her finger at him, saying, probably you're to blame, something like that. Here's who I blame. It's the little boy. So blame is personal blame, whether it's towards a group or a fantasy character, or blaming the weather, or blaming an individual, like that boy, you, right there. Blame is a totally understandable reaction. We've seen it. We've done it. Blame. I made this little statement to go with it, or a few statements. I'm so confused by the results of my actions. I'm so confused by the results of my actions that I'm embarrassed. And so in an effort to attract attention, maybe distract people from the fact that it's the result of my own actions, I want to attract attention, control other people's attention, attract sympathy, and perhaps even get their assistance. And in order to do that, I am blaming blah, 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 blah. I'm blaming the drugs. I'm blaming the addiction. I'm blaming the post-traumatic stress disorder. And all of those things are legitimate. At the same time as I'm kind of being silly and making fun of a variety of things,
I think
there could be accurate. What Obama could be to blame for, whatever, right? Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say that I think a lot of times in blame as well, that it could have something to do with faking, the faking element. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes. Good point.
You can actually see, that it's not that person's fault or that group of people. It's not their fault, but you might still go through the faking anyway.
Yeah. And I'll just drop the phrase false flag, but let's not go into it. But we can create a diversion or distraction when we're casting blame, especially if we feel really clear that, I performed very poorly on stage today. But you know what it was? It was the weather, because the weather was so cold that my strings popped on my guitar while I was on stage. And I would have had extra strings, but because the weather was so cold, I also couldn't go to the store ahead of time to get the extra pack of string. And basically, it's the weather. It's the weather. Anyway, whatever. So another form of blame. Other people should be more blah, 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 blah. Other people should be less blah, 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 blah. I should not have to blah, 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 blah. And do you know what I think of that person? I'll tell you what I think of that person. Blah, 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 blah is just such a clown, or whatever. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? Now, I love this picture. This is the little girl in the pink shirt that is throwing leaves. Yes, she's picked up a leaf from off the ground, and she is just going to crush that leaf and throw it into back on the ground, basically. All right. I can so relate to that little girl's frustration, and, she's taking it out on the leaves. Because why? Because it's the leaves' fault. All right. I mean, the leaf just fell and hit me on the head and caused a concussion, or maybe not a concussion, but I'm going to go with that. All right. I saw some freaking football games last weekend, and the showmanship, or the acting that some of the players do to deceive the officials, to make the officials think that they were fouled. It's a real art form, Like, I've seen guys do it, and I was like, that was a good, fake. If I had only seen the last 2 seconds or whatever, I would have really believed them, Do you get what I'm saying, Dan?
Absolutely, yes.
So what really happened here is the leaves. I don't know why the sun got further away from the earth, this part of the earth or whatever, and it got colder, and then the trees got dried out, and the leaves fell, and the leaves hit me on the head. And it's just, there's a lot of reasons that it's not my fault. That's all I'm saying. All right. So far I've presented some common patterns in language. I'm going to just skim ahead to see how far we are We still got a little ways to go, just so you know. Maybe we'll speed up our pace here. So now I've presented some common patterns in language. You may notice that your behavior may have included some of these kind of statements that I've made. If so, then you are probably over the age of 2. In fact, you may have noticed quite a few other people who are also over the age of 2, right? In your midst, all over the place. You're interacting with them day after day. There they are. All of these people over the age of 2. To review, people by the age of 2 typically will form a variety of expectations, and then inevitably some of those expectations get violated, and so then the people occasionally get confused. You with me still?
Yes.
Okay, and once they get confused, perhaps they get ashamed about being socially witnessed as confused. All these people can see me confused. It's embarrassing. They could punish me. They could retract with rewards, or I could lose rewards. I could lose popularity. So that shame can lead them to do what?
Casting blame.
Casting blame. Right. It makes a lot of sense, and they're gonna try and influence other people's perceptions about them. Right? It's the weather, or it's not my fault, or it's also completely legitimate for somebody to say, you know what, I need to practice more. I need to get lessons so I can get better at my singing or whatever, right? These people don't seem to be responding to my singing. I got a 4 out of 10 from 5 judges. I think I should practice more. Or maybe should I give it up? Whatever. Go ahead, Dan.
I think that's an art form as well,
what?
Actually. Being able to affect people's perceptions of you without them actually seeing that you're doing that.
Yeah.
In other words, some people in my past, let's put it this way, keep it very vague, were really good at, casting blame without actually, in a roundabout way, right? So that they can come out looking like roses.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? You follow me?
Yeah. And that is actually a skill. We can be resentful that some people are really good at that. We can also go, dang, they must have had a lot of experience to get that good at that. They've done that before. Wow. Right. Not that we necessarily think that's a great skill that I want to have, but we certainly could. How can you influence other people's perceptions? At least back to the thing about George Clooney and those other actors in that movie, in the scene that they were in, they wanted to influence the behavior of the law enforcement officers, right? And if they can get if they can walk into the crowd and have the crowd be so jubilant and what's that called, crowd surfing or whatever, if the crowd's just so jubilant about them, then at least it's gonna make it difficult for the cops to get in and arrest them, right? The cops are gonna have to throw in the tear gas or whatever to disperse the crowd. Like, it's gonna take a lot, and then the people are gonna be pissed, right? What do you mean you're taking away our hero? But he's such a great, he's a great. Oliver North is a great soldier, or he's our president, or he's the. What do you mean you're gonna take away Winston? He's such a great quarterback. You want him to conform to the normal behaviors of society? My reference there, right?
Absolutely, yes.
You know what I heard? I was talking to Kevin Hart the other day, and Kevin said to me, "JR, you need to stop doing stupid stuff." I was just referring to Winston, Mr. Winston, the Heisman Trophy winner for Florida State University Seminoles football team, and what's his name? Kevin Hart's recent conversation with him. These are real references in case you care. I know Dan knows most of them. So all this sequence of things shame can lead to casting blame. If I'm Mr. Winston, I blame it on, I was drinking. I'm not like that normally. I was drinking, for instance. That makes sense, right? Or I was young back then. That was October. I was young. I've grown up a lot since then. All right. How would you describe that next picture with the blocks, Dan? Go ahead. What's your commentary on it?
Well, the one child looks pretty angry at the other child. I think that's maybe he knocked the blocks over. It doesn't really show that, but for some reason he doesn't look very pleased with the other child.
He looks like he's about to throw a block at him or something, right?
Or hit them in the head with it, yeah.
Yeah. How could you do that? Why did you lock them down? Yeah. So blame is a classic coping mechanism, and it is a coping mechanism. It can be functional. It can, manipulate social perceptions. It can also be accurate. We could say, maybe the kid did knock the blocks down, right? I don't want you knocking my blocks down. You need to go play somewhere else, right? That's all makes sense, right? So blame is a classic coping mechanism in the stages of grieving or learning. So here's a new element, that there's stages of grieving or stages of learning. And within those stages, blame is a classic stage. We go through blame. That's just what humans do. So blame can be a form of denial, like a distraction from, if I'm embarrassed, I can blame somebody to distract from my embarrassment, right? Or to distract from the fact that my underlying expectation was not fulfilled. In other words, that I was erroneous in my expectation. Is that all clear?
Yes.
So further, blame can lead to resentment, antagonism, contempt, and lots of arguing. Here's my arguing script. I think that who is really to blame is not blah, 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 probably me or us, right? I think that who's to blame is not blah, 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 but instead is blah, 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 blah. And how can you even be so hysterical to suggest that blah, 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 or that da, 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 da? You might as well be saying the da, 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 right? So then people go back and forth with hysteria. You shouldn't be so hysterical. How can you be so hysterical? All of that is called hysteria, right? So the response to hysteria is saying, how can you be so hysterical? That is another instance of hysteria. Is that clear?
It's antagonizing, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's antagonizing back towards the other person. So maybe they antagonize first, and then you antagonize back saying, you shouldn't yell at me for knocking the blocks down. If you want to stack the blocks, you should move, right? So there's a lot of ways that can build into a dynamic of conflict. Or not. It doesn't need to have that result of a dynamic of ongoing conflict, but that's certainly possible. We've all experienced it. So there's a mutual hysteria. It could be a hysteria between two people, groups of people, two groups of people. It can get pretty interesting. So hysteria is a type of fear and a subset of shame. So shame is a big category. It means that I'm concerned about a future punishment, right? And hysteria is a type of shame. It's a type of, so fear is a type, shame is a type of fear. So you got fear, the big thing. Small within that is shame. Even smaller is hysteria. Hysteria is a type of fear and a type of shame relating to what? Dan?
Embarrassment?
Well, it's definitely, hysteria has that antagonistic, aggressive tone, right?
Right.
So it's not just fear. It's not just shame. It's actually got an aggressive element or a panicked element at least. And it's easily spills over into aggression.
And I think that's where you can set up a contrast, this kind of is a tangent, but, the victimhood and the hero, and you're setting up that contrast when you use blame as a coping mechanism. You understand what I mean?
That's right on. Yeah, that's totally within the realm of what we're covering here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always the victim. I'm always the victim in certain stories that I tell, and I'm always the hero in certain stories that I tell. And yeah, that's an intense identity, and it's rigid. It's tension. It's chronic tension. People actually are stressed, and to rehearse those stories in those ways is a maintenance of a coping mechanism. And to interfere with people's coping mechanism can produce outbursts, right? You can actually produce, flame-outs, inflammation, right?
Yeah, I've had some people in the last couple of years cause those things in me, so yes.
Right.
I know what you...
And all somebody has to do to cause hysteria is to say something that you consider stupid. So if I'm in a mode where I'm already hysterical and I'm always already they're stupid and they shouldn't be so stupid, and they say one more thing that I think is stupid, then I'll just go off on them. I'm going to continue my condescension or my animosity. It's not unusual for it to build. So one of the really great things to do there is withdraw or slow down. However, in hysteria, people aren't really alert. They're beyond the point of alertness and calm, right?
Right.
They're in a stressed mode.
And they have lost the ability to logic as well at that point, yes.
Right. So one of the things to do can just, I think about, as a teacher or a parent, just separate those two kids. If they're really, really having trouble with each other, separate them. And in fact, you might even isolate both of them. If it's like a classroom, I send you to timeout in that corner, you to timeout in that corner, and all the rest of the class is going fine. But I don't want these kids that are so inflamed and so irritable to be interacting with anybody, especially not each other.
In a Facebook context, we could say that's blocking somebody. You know what I mean?
Yep, or unfriending, even without blocking them, sure. So, so we're talking about hysteria is a subtype of fear, and even further, a subtype of shame. So there's hysteria. Hysteria is a defense mechanism, and I put the script with it. I do not yet want to simply admit that I expected blah, 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 and instead what actually happened was blah, blah, blah. That is what's going on underneath hysteria. Hysteria is like this distraction and this panic thing over the top of all that happened was there was an expectation and it wasn't fulfilled. Like as in disappointment. I don't want people to see me disappointed. I don't want people to see me crying. I don't want people to see me sad. I don't want people to see me confused. Put a layer of hysteria on top of it. Got that?
Yeah, I wouldn't be all these ways if it wasn't for blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, all these people are looking at me. I don't appreciate that, okay? You people need to stop. Just because I'm yelling and I'm going to, right? And then you burst out. You just attack the next perceived threat. It can snowball. So the next picture is a little girl like on the back of a chair. You want to describe that one?
Yeah, it looks like she's like trying to hide her face because she might feel embarrassed. Maybe, she's peeking out to see if, she has any attention, I think. And she looks like she's trying to hide her face.
Yeah. That could be that she's actually trying to attract attention. I think that what I perceive in that image is that she's looking to see if the threat has disappeared. She's actually trying to hide her disappointment and her distress, and is looking to see is the perceived threat still around. That's my imagination, but what you said is also a valid interpretation. So underneath that photo, I asked, so how do people relate to the reality that expectations exist and can be violated, and even inevitably will be violated? How do people relate to that reality? Expectations exist and they can be violated. What about the fact that confusion can arise? How do people relate to the fact that confusion can arise? How do people relate to the fact that embarrassment can arise? What about the fact that hysterical blame can arise, and then hysterical defenses of the hysterical blame because the only reason I did it was because of the weather and and you shouldn't even be and the way that tantrum, right?
Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive ourselves, huh? Right?
Potentially, right. We may actually be out to pull our attention away from like the fact that we're just disappointed. We're deceiving ourselves or in a denial kind of that grieving mode where I don't want to grieve. Oh, I'm not grieving. My voice isn't raised. It's just that the weather is bad today. It's never happened before. I'm not like this normally.
You clown.
So there's a fact that hysteria exists. It can arise, individual hysteria, group hysterias, snowballing hysterias. Hysteria can last for minutes. It can last for centuries amongst institutions and groups like that have rivalry. Because Harvard, and Yale, they've been around for a long time. They keep having some rivalry in football. You know what I mean. It might not be hysterical, though. But maybe it is. I don't know. So, next picture. Dan, go ahead. Describe the picture. You'll do the picture describing from now on, apparently. Go ahead.
It looks...
Grocery store aisle.
And it looks like the two kids are fighting over... I'm trying to see what that is. Is that a bag of chips?
I think so. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like they're fighting over it because it looks like they both want it. And the mother is looks pretty upset, like she's yelling at them both, maybe, perhaps. Is that what's going on?
I don't know what. There's no caption or anything. I just find these photos on Google because I can Google, like Haley Heelan recently told us, right?
I can type in, yes.
Well, I can Google too. I can Google images.
In order to Google, you have to type in. So yeah, right.
Dang, you got me on that. Oh, I am embarrassed.
Give me the bag of chips back.
But, Mom, he. That's the wrong kind. We have a coupon for the other kind. Why is she getting that kind? It's the wrong kind. We already have that kind. We need more of the other kind.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have to push around the cart. This bag of chip is going to weigh so much. It's going to make it heavy for me to push around. Make her push, Mom. All right. All right. Yeah, in case you didn't know, I am an experienced sibling. So people who are who were like an only child might not relate to what I said as powerfully as I do. Dan, you had several siblings growing up, right?
Absolutely. I have 2 sisters and a brother. So.
Fortunately, you never had any occasion to have any kind of squabbles with them, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean,
Yeah.
We had a perfect relationship. Everything went smoothly the whole time. It was amazing.
You know what? I've heard you talk about your siblings too, and I'm not gonna name any names here, but I was impressed by how much respect you have for all of them and always have. Like, remember that one thing that happened in 1984? And that was so smooth. It must be maybe it's your parenting or something, or grandparents, or where you grew up. Are you from the United States? All right. Because we have kind of like this war-like antagonistic culture, I've noticed. I don't know if you noticed that people kind of get antagonistic sometimes in the U.S. more than other places, but...
Yeah, it just makes me sick because it's quite ironic.
Are you from Canada? It makes me sick too. All these Americans, they're so snobby. And the thing that it really bothers me about these people from the United States is they call themselves Americans. But Canada's in America.
Yeah, I would never be like them. That's all I know. Even as a clown.
I agree. I would never even come close to being like them. So back to the subject of the grocery store dispute. What about the fact that sometimes around the age of 2, most people develop the capacity to engage in arguments that may appear silly to outsiders? What about the fact that some people may continue those arguments for decades, even frequently triggering resentment and contempt so as to justify withdrawing from at least one person who is so unpredictable because I refuse to update my own expectations in accord with their actual behaviors that I've noticed over and over again? All right. Why should I have to? Why should I have to change my expectations just because they're wrong? All right, that was my Saturday Night Live skit impression. Next picture, Daniel. Daniel, explain. What is going on there? Jeez, what is that?
I think that she's really frustrated because she can't get through to him, and he looks maybe disappointed. But they obviously is communication breakdown.
I think you're looking at a different picture. In the picture I'm looking at, the people are really, really happy, and they're like holding hands and skipping through the fields, like in that one morning children's cartoon TV show. Remember?
Yeah.
All right. No. Okay. So maybe someone just seems too erratic for me at a particular time. Like back to like reality, as I'm assessing people, I'm doing my best. Maybe I'm 2 years old. Maybe I'm 38. Whatever. But I'm doing my best to assess people. And maybe someone just I think they're too erratic or too unpredictable for me at a particular time. That's like a completely reasonable, predictable response. Eventually, I might have that response, right? Of course. Maybe my interest in them is not great enough to continue interacting with them because I'm not ready to learn that fast. There's too much confusion. There's too much things outside of my expectations. It's too much of a learning curve. That makes sense, right?
Yes.
So I might want to repel them. I might want to create resentment, and I need a few hours, by myself, or a few decades by myself, or whatever. But maybe interacting with them is so challenging to my pre-existing expectations, which might be erroneous, that I can only tolerate interacting with them in small doses, a little or infrequently or whatever, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
That pesky pest is so annoying. Next picture, Dan.
Well, there's a little girl holding her ears, and obviously doesn't want to hear whatever is being said to her, or just she's probably even making some noises so she doesn't have to hear whatever's being said. If I can picture a little kid, that's usually how they do it.
Yeah, I think you're looking at a different picture for me. In the picture that I see, there's a little kid who obviously somebody's farted in the car, and the kid's covering their ears so that they can't smell it because they're so annoyed. Oh, I can't believe that my brother did that again. All right. If I was simply bored, I would not be interested enough in a subject to argue. I have to be interested in the person I'm arguing with a little bit in order to bother arguing with them. So I have to be interested in the person and the subject, right? Especially to ongoingly argue. So people only argue for decades about things that interest them in some way, maybe quite a bit. Further, people only argue with someone for decades if that other person interests them in some way. Next picture, Dan.
Well, it looks like a wife, I'm going to assume, is kind of laying down the law here to her husband, giving him the finger in the face. I guess she's taking the remote because she wants control over the TV. This kind of how I'm looking at it, but I know you're looking at a different picture.
Yeah, in my picture, she's saying, "Smell my finger."
Oh, man.
Okay, moving on. How do I relate? I'll give Dan a second to kind of
what are they watching on
compose
TV
himself.
now? That's what I'm concerned about,
We can't talk about this. We can't talk about this right now. I don't even know what picture Dan's talking about. So it has something to do with the flatulence in the prior picture, though. Anyway, so how do I relate to people such as 2-year-olds who may on occasion experience confusion, shame, blame, and so on? How do I relate to other people in hysteria? Like, I could withdraw from them. I could experiment with them. I could just be patient and kind of observe. There's lots of ways that I could relate to people experiencing hysterias, like confusion, shame, blame, grief, etc.
I go back to your example of the 5 people watching a football game. How 3 of them might be all excited and they might get upset about a play or this or that, and then the 4th one might look at the other 3 and judge and condemn their behavior, and then of course there's the 5th one who's just sitting there, just amused by all 4 of the other people.
Even the guy who takes the time to condescend on the other 3, yeah, that's actually doesn't even upset some people. They're just like, yeah, I get that, they're not focusing on real issues like, which candidate in which election or whatever, the GMOs or the health or whatever. They're not focusing on that. They're focusing on, did the official make a bad call? I got that. And this person's focusing on, why are those people so focused on sports and sports are dumb and whatever. Okay.
Right.
So, anyway, when I was talking to Kevin Hart and he said to me, JR, stop doing stupid stuff, I said to him, I've never done anything stupid.
Except that voice.
Smell my finger. So when people are displaying hysteria, or when I interpret other people as experiencing hysteria, I have a lot of ways that I can relate to them. Do I withdraw from them because they're manifesting a behavioral pattern that I've been repressing? So if I have this underlying condescension or blame thing, but I don't really want to admit that I have a tendency to throw out hysterical blame or to distract people from my disappointment and my embarrassment and so on, my fear. I might withdraw from them because I don't want them to trigger me. That isn't bad or good. That's just like something that someone might do. I might push them away with criticisms and condescension. Why are you people so upset about a little thing like the concussion that football player sustained? I mean, come on. It's like gladiators. They're paid $30,000 a carry, and if he wants to walk off the field, LeGarrette, what's his name? Blunt, if he wants to walk off the field, hey, he's got to take the consequences for that because I'm a Steelers fan and we don't tolerate that. Steelers is different from, whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So next picture, smell my finger. What? No, go ahead. What was the next picture, Dan, that you see?
Well, the next one I see, it looks like there's a young child who's upset, and the mother's trying to calm him down by shushing him.
Oh, that's not she's not blaming, you're right. She's more doing like, shh, be quiet, honey. You're gonna wake the baby, and if you wake the baby, I'm gonna punch you in the, what? Go ahead.
But I think what she's doing actually would probably exasperate the situation or make it worse.
Right. A kid who's in that mode, he's intentionally trying to antagonize her or attract her attention, we would guess, right?
Right.
So if I've been repressing shame, I'm going to shush people on occasion, right? That makes sense that people would go through that stage or try shushing. It makes sense that she would try it, but she probably wouldn't persist in it. If I've been repressing shame, then wouldn't I flee from any display of shame that scares me? I don't want I don't want that conversation where people start revealing stuff and people start getting vulnerable. Oh, I don't want to go to a support group or a therapy session. That's too intimidating. It's too frightening, right? So if I've been repressing shame, then of course I'm going to flee from any displays of shame that are too close to, my issues. So I might be really we think about okay, have you ever seen the movie American Beauty, Dan?
No.
Okay, in the American Beauty movie, there's this kind of macho guy, and he hates homosexuals. The twist is he's attracted to men, and he's a guy. But he has this thing, he's got to push away, anybody who triggers his shame. It makes sense that people would have these kind of coping mechanisms.
Absolutely, but I want to know why we're on this call then. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead, keep going. You said, how we would avoid going to therapy or counseling. I mean, we've been talking for 2 years, so I don't know who's avoiding what at this point, but keep going. You don't get my...
So what you're saying is stop doing stupid stuff.
Yes, I'm agreeing with Kevin, yes.
I'm walking off the field after the game is over. Okay, so if it makes sense that somebody who's repressing shame is going to flee or withdraw from any, open expression of shame. A kid crying is going to be upsetting to somebody who's trying to repress disappointment, right? Somebody expressing frustration is going to... So if I'm trying to repress frustration and disappointment, then I'm going to unleash on anybody who dares on Facebook to complain about something. I'm going to unleash on them because they're expressing frustration, and that's dumb because people should never be frustrated or whatever, right?
Sounds ironic to me, yep.
It does. It's kind of familiar to me, in fact. But I'm not like that anymore. It was just because of the weather for the entire 2006 to 2012. But anyway, all right. It was global warming. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Al Gore he should have been more proactive. All right. So
instead of inventing the internet, he probably should have been doing other things. Let's face it.
Yeah, I mean, inventing the internet caused carbon dioxide levels to increase. So that's why I was hyperventilating, because the carbon dioxide levels were so high outside of me that they weren't the right level in my bloodstream. So anyway.
Also, the internet causes people to tell other people to smell their finger, just for the record.
I don't know what that's about, but if it wasn't for the internet, there would be no Facebook.
I'm sure you don't know what that's about. Okay. Keep going.
What is this thing about smelling your finger? Like, why would someone say that?
Well, in a high school football locker room, I don't know. I mean,
LeGarrette Blunt, come over here. I want you to smell my finger.
Does it smell like a blunt? Probably not.
All right.
Unless you're Bill Clinton. But anyway, we won't go into that.
Wow, we are all over the place today, which is a
Monica,
surprise.
come on, Monica Lewinsky. We don't know the reference. All right, let's just move on.
All right. So if I've been repressing shame, which I've never done personally, of course, if I've been repressing shame, then I would flee from displays of shame. I would push away people who are displaying, shame or upset or distress or crying or frustration or whatever. I would condescend on them. Of course I would. I would push them away. If what scares me is the display of shame, would I flee from whatever scares me? Yes, naturally. That would be my first response. Flee from it, if possible. If I can't flee from it because it's coming up on my Facebook screen over and over and over, then I'm going to condescend. Then I'm going to call somebody a troll. And I'm going to, call them names, whatever. I'm going to block them. I'm going to unfriend them. What?
Rape face.
Rape face. I'm going to put like inflammatory images. I'm going to put it in response to their thread, right? So next picture, Dan.
Looks like a despondent family, a mother and a father and a daughter, and they're all kind of avoiding each other.
Why do people get so sad like that? I just don't understand why they're not just a happy family.
Because of lack of communication and shame and blame and that what we've been talking about last time.
Why do they suck at communication so much that they blame and shame? Why would they have shame? That's stupid.
Because they're not practicing enough, probably. They're not exploring enough. I mean, learning. At least that family doesn't look like they're learning anything. I don't know.
I resent them. They're not right. They should come to me and ask me for my wisdom and guidance and expertise and be like, hey, you seem like you got it all together. What should I do? All right.
Sometimes the people we go to for help, psychiatrists and counselors, and their shit's pretty messed up too. So that's quite ironic. But yeah, because somebody has schooling and has a lot of times just because somebody has schooling, they could be experts in a certain psychology or whatever. But it's just kind of interesting that some of the people that we go to for help sometimes don't really have their shit together either.
Yeah, but they do have the best drugs.
Right.
So
yes.
What do I care if they like
Tommy Chong? My therapist is Tommy Chong, actually.
Did you know that Bill Clinton did not exhale when he was? How am I going to connect that somehow to Monica Lewinsky? He did not exhale when he was sucking on her finger.
Maybe he's still waiting to exhale with Whitney Houston. I don't know.
Oh, nice. One time I said, "Come on, Whitney," and that's a reference for just Dan. I'm not going to go on about that.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know. I think it's the internet and Al Gore. So moving on to below the picture of the despondent family, that's just they're not on the same page. Further, if for some reason I was not successful in fleeing, like if I was repressing shame and then somebody's displaying shame, and then I wasn't successful in fleeing for whatever reason, then wouldn't I attempt to push away the perceived source of stress? Wouldn't I increase my own stress hormones and elevate and go from flight mode to fight mode? Next picture, Daniel.
Yes, I think these two kids have definitely increased their hormones, and they're literally butting heads and figuratively as they look pretty angry at each other.
They're possessed by demons. Do you know what the demons they're possessed by? Post-traumatic stress dysphoria. Dysphobia. That means being afraid of the wrong stuff. You never heard of that?
Nope.
If you had dysphobia, you would know, because then you can get marijuana prescribed for that in certain states, at least. So you should try getting it. You should try go to the psychiatrist and say, "I think I've got dysphobia. Can you hook me up with some of the good stuff?" All right.
Yeah, I do like faking a lot, so I think I can pull that off.
Oh, faking is that's a different mental disorder. I was talking about dysphobia. The point is, Dan, you're distracting me. I'm trying to make a point with my
Oh,
fingers so you can smell it. All right.
I don't even like points, actually, as you would know, and many other people. I don't like
45 million points, Dan, if you'll just shut the hell up.
Okay.
What?
Like,
No.
I think
What do you have to say that's so important?
I think button heads.
Oh, we're butting heads now? That's good. We're like just displaying the thing. We get into our own little hysteria thing, and it's just hilarious.
Yes, it is.
This is just for those of you who don't know, this is the first time Dan and I have ever interacted. So the point is that hysteria is a natural part of life. Did I just try a distraction method there? I don't know. The point is that hysteria is a natural part of life. Some of them last only briefly. Some hysterias can last decades or even centuries. Hysteria is a type of fear, and the subtypes of hysteria can include grief. Grief is a type of hysteria. That's a fear about how someone will adapt to some loss or absence. How am I going to live without blah, blah, blah? That's grief. It's a type of hysteria. It's a type of panic. Is that clear?
Yeah, I couldn't live without Al Gore. Absolutely.
Another type of hysteria would be shame. I can't live without the Pittsburgh Steelers 1933 throwback uniforms. I know, the bumblebee things. That's crazy. Anyway, I can't live without that. I'm going to get one of those. Oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get number 27 for LeGarrette Blount's 1933 throwback jersey because he's not even on the team anymore. Maybe I'll.
I was thinking about getting 420 actually, if they have that number.
I got it. That's good. That's good. Pennsylvania, though, it's just so you know, the referendum hasn't passed there yet, as far as I know. So be careful about, you know. Okay, drawing attention to your preferences and expectations. So hysteria is a type of fear. Shame is a type of fear and hysteria. What is shame about? It's a fear about what, Dan?
Social approval.
Yeah, and the consequences of social disapproval in particular might be what?
Loss of what would you call it? Well, loss of rewards, I guess.
Loss of
Social
reward
rewards.
or increasing of punishment or risk of punishment. So shame would be a fear of an imagined future punishment or imagined future loss, like a loss of reward. Blame can be hysterical. Blame is actually a little bit of an exception because blame can just be like, well, the person who's at fault is blah, blah, blah. The person who's responsible is blah, blah, blah. I'm going to sue them, or I'm going to, I'm going to shoot an arrow at that creature because it's, what's it called? Like a dog that's got rabies or something, or it's a bear, and the bear is ripping through our hen, our hen roost or whatever they call that, our hens, and to save the bear or to save the hens, we're going to shoot an arrow at the bear or into the bear or whatever. And yeah, the bear's to blame, and we're going to kill the bear, and then we're going to eat it, and then we're going to have a party.
Roast the bear, huh? Bear roast, excuse me.
With eggs, because I like eggs.
Yes. You know where I like eggs? On my face, actually.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of the movie Queen, which is actually not a movie, but more of like a rock band. But anyway, sometimes when I make mistakes, it's funnier than what I actually plan to say. But not usually.
I never do that, so I'm not sure what you mean. But
blame, when expressed, it's your fault, by the way. Blame, when expressed, can lead to compensation. Like, Dan, you still owe me 43,000 points. Blame can lead to compensation and apology. By the way, I did mean to apologize for the thing I said the other day that I really shouldn't have said. I take it back.
You'll be apologizing for the rest of our friendship, so.
Well, I did say this is the first time we'd ever talked, but everything that happened prior to I apologize for not meeting you like in the 90s because things would have been so much better if we had just like met in the 90s back when I was so much more mature. Okay. So blame can lead to compensation, blame can lead to apology, blame can lead to other outcomes like ongoing animosities, conflicts, injury, catastrophes, disasters. Oh, look at this. This next picture, it's the hug. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like she's really relieved to get that hug. So yeah,
It's so good to see you, and I am so glad that your finger smells like Dove soap because I thought I thought it was some kind of a bad thing, but it's just that you washed your hands, and I really appreciate that because I used to tell you every day, 4 times a day, will you wash your hands? Will you wash your hands? All right, because that's like a mother and son kind of looking picture there, as far as I know. I'm not really
yeah.
sure. All right, consider the idea that blah, 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 blah simply should not exist. Consider that idea. Blah, 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 blah should not exist. That may already be a form of distress hysteria, right? Right?
It sounds like Advaita, actually, but yeah, sure.
Blah, 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 blah should simply not exist. You know what else should not exist? Advaita. All these robotic Advaita people, they're stupid. They're immature. They're like 2-year-olds who haven't grown up and gotten to be 3 yet. Next picture. What?
You shouldn't talk that way about Swifty Flame and other various types.
Pete Hughes? Okay. Excuse me. Gesundheit. What's the next picture?
Whoa, I don't know. It looks like...
That's Pete Hughes right there.
Yeah, it looks like there's a kid there who's just basically pushing away. He looks mad, and he's pushing away the other kid. Maybe trying to get someone else's attention. He can't out of the picture. I'm not sure.
This kid is crying, and he shouldn't be crying. It's upsetting me that he's crying. I'm going to give you a reason to cry. All right. What is so frightening? What is so frightening? Are you laughing at me?
Are you making words up now?
Yes, I am.
What is so frightening anyway?
What is so frightening? What is so frightening about the possible existence of something to someone? What is so frightening to someone about the possible existence of something that those people should say it should not even exist? What shames are they attempting to hide or distract others from or distract themselves from, if any? Next picture, Dan.
Oh, he's basically in the mirror. There's a guy in a mirror, not a kid anymore. I guess it's an adult actually, and he's upset, and he's basically yelling into the mirror, looking at himself. I guess he's mad at himself, perhaps.
I think the word here that you're looking for is smell my finger. No. Scolding. He's scolding the mirror. He's like, "You're such a dumb guy, and you should be taller, and you shouldn't have so much shame." What?
Usually, I just flex in the mirror for like a half hour every day. I don't know what's wrong with that guy. You just got to check yourself out. All your muscles.
Yeah, I'm pretty. Look, it's Monday. It's Selfie Monday. What?
My six-pack. I like to check that out in the mirror as well. I took a picture one time of my six-pack in the mirror and put it on Facebook. That was a good time.
Talking about Path Blue Ribbon?
Yeah, exactly.
Hysteria should not exist. How can all these people still act like 2-year-olds? They're at least 5. I mean, seriously, how come they don't have totally accurate expectations about reality like I do? This is the most frustrating thing ever. Next picture.
It looks there's a baby that's looking at himself and looks kind of very interested or curious, I guess you'd say. Maybe he's never seen himself before. I don't know.
And the baby says, "I really just don't understand how all of these people don't have totally accurate expectations like I do. It's like they're just freaking out over unfulfilled expectations. And that is not what I expected, and it's totally freaking me out." Next picture.
Looks like there's 2 kids jumping on the bed having fun. I think these ones are actually having fun. It looks like the little girl's smelling her own finger. But I think they're having a good time is what I see.
How does she get her hair to do that?
I don't know. That's incredible.
It's like
I mean,
anti-gravity.
I know she's too young for it to be like a something about Mary moment. So.
Oh my! That's
What?
why the little boy looked so happy. All right.
Was that a tasteless joke? I don't like tasteless jokes.
I don't either. I find that offensive.
It actually is pretty. Anyway, go ahead. Let's continue.
You want me to rescue you from your own references right there, don't you?
I'm feeling very ashamed at the moment, to be honest with you.
You should. You should. So let me back up. Hysteria should not exist. How can all these people still act like 2-year-olds? I mean, seriously, how come they don't have totally accurate expectations about reality like I do? This is the most frustrating thing ever. I really just don't understand how all these people don't have totally accurate expectations like I do. It's like they're just freaking out over unfulfilled expectations. It's not what I expected, and it's totally freaking me out. And then, why are you laughing?
Oh, I don't know, because I'm freaked out right now, you know?
Then the other kid says, this is your line, Dan. This is where the other kid says something cool, like read the thing. Read the thing.
Yeah, the other kid says something about going into a field where there's no right or wrong.
Okay. No, read the line. Read the script, man.
Yeah, that was totally weird, isn't it? As if that makes sense. Hey, come on, jump on this bed with me.
Come jump on this bed with me. Nope. Did you say jump the first time?
I did say jump, yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness, yes.
Okay, because if you didn't.
I did too. What are you implying, sir? Yes, come jump on this bed with me.
Okay, cool. Because they're having fun. They're just little kids. They're just having fun. It's innocent. It's innocent. They're not worried about being ashamed. They're like, oh, whatever. They would do it if they were naked. They would do it, whatever. Right? Maybe? I don't know. Maybe not. What?
It's kind of like that Rumi poem I was just expressing now.
Oh, the field of right and wrong? That was Rumi. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so Dan, I've concluded my, pre-prepared commentaries and pictures and references. So what are your concluding comments, questions, thoughts, or fingers?
Well, I still got all 10 of my fingers, so we're good there. But yeah, no, I obviously, this is interesting information that as a 2-year-old, I've never really processed this stuff. But, it certainly could be very beneficial to somebody who's going through any one of these feelings or stages to have this guideline, you know what I mean? To have this map in front of them, which it wouldn't be useful to everybody, of course. Nothing ever is good for everybody, like you said. But yeah, I think, this is keeping it, it's really simple and like self-evident, but in the mode or the stage of confusion, it's really easy to miss all this stuff, completely rush over it and go right into the blaming and the shaming,
Right.
Yeah.
And kind of not even know you're doing it. Like people get into ruts. Do you remember me telling the story of a grandmother kind of yelling at a 2-year-old? I could say more about it, but I'm just wondering if you get the reference just from that. And then I interrupted the grandmother. Do you remember this story?
Yeah, I do remember you telling. I think it was on a call one time you told that story.
Yeah, and all it takes sometimes is a distraction or interruption. People don't want to stay in ruts. They don't want to stay in vicious cycles of snowballing their own distress. Usually, right? If you just if someone interrupts me, intensely enough, then I'm knocked out of that hypnosis, that trance. And the same thing applies. If I'm interacting with somebody else, if I can pull them out of their trance through surprising them, through humor, through cold water. I mean cold water when they expect it, because I don't mean surprising them with cold water, because that can be bad. Anyway.
But even surprising with a brick across the head sometimes can be beneficial. It's like that movie. Did you ever see Airplane when the one person in their seat is freaking out, and Mrs. Beaver goes over and starts smacking the crap out of them? I mean, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You remember that part?
I've never flown.
Why are you so hysterical? Let me smack the crap out of you.
I've never flown on an airplane, so I don't remember. I don't know what you're talking about.
The movie Airplane.
The movie, you're talking about when you fly in an airplane, they show a movie?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
All right.
I'm gonna start talking jive if you keep it up.
Okay, so we've been going for nearly a minute and 40 seconds. I mean, an hour and 40 minutes. You said you're gonna start jiving, so like, let's hear. Have you ever considered a hip hop career?
Well, I already have a name picked out, but that's as far as I've gotten.
Dan, what was it?
DJ Dano Fresh.
DJ Dano Fresh. Okay, throw down some rhymes. Let's hear what you got.
That's all I got. Just
okay, you don't have any rhymes. You just got a name.
That's why I haven't gotten anywhere.
Yeah, your career's going a little bit slowly so far. All right.
Yeah.
All right, so, huh?
I'm going to leave the jive to Mrs. Cleaver or whatever her name is.
Mrs. Beaver in the Airplane movie?
Smell my finger. Yeah, all right. Mile High Club. Anyway, what are we talking about anymore?
I'm just wondering if you have any concluding comments about how this was like a really awesome experience to talk about these things, and
I think you're my hero. I think you're brilliant, and
Go on.
I'm not exaggerating at all for a fact that at all, but no, this in the time I've been talking to you, this would sum up some of our conversations that we've had.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you know, when for people who are listening, when I say we've been talking for a couple years, I don't know how clear you are, Dan, in the development that I've had over time, because when you first interacted with me, you were at a different point. But it's absolutely a fact that I've known a lot of this stuff in small ways for a long time, but I've really developed through conversations that I've had with you and other conversations and other interactions that I've had. I've really developed a tolerance for hysteria, and even a skill set in regard to how to interact with people who are experiencing hysteria. Or not, or just to say, I don't need to interact with them, So to be at peace with the reality that hysteria is possible. I might experience it at times, other people might, and I can just accept that. I can even be skillful in relation to the fact of hysteria. So there's contrast, there's calm, there's mania and distress and arousal and panic. There's just all sorts of varieties of contrasts. And which is the thing that's the best thing, Dan? The thing that everybody should focus most on?
Well, I think as the dog runs through the park, it definitely should be on its back the whole way. That's the right position.
Okay.
It should do you know what I mean? It should just be on its back and it should wiggle across the park, right? I mean, I think that's the best position, isn't it?
Well, but what about which direction it's going in? There's just one right way.
Oh.
I understand what you're saying about how the dog is locomoting itself through the park, but which direction should it go? There's just one right way, right?
Well, yeah, I think in the northern hemisphere it's counterclockwise, and in the southern hemisphere it's clockwise, maybe?
Well, I'm just kind of like going back and forth in my chair because it's like a swivel chair. So I go to the right, and then I go to the left, and like either of them seem all right with me.
Yeah, okay. That sounds right.
Huh.
Wow. So there's no right or wrong way, huh?
Well, if you're a dog going through a park on its back, not that you are, but if you were,
I would avoid the shit, first of all.
You don't want to glide. No, the shit is good because it gives you don't have as much friction. You get more smoothness. You get a glide. See, right? Just to get you smudge your back with it, and then you just go right through the park because it's grass on the right.
Brilliant. See, I told you were brilliant.
Well, sometimes what you really have to do is smile so people can see your teeth. They're really white, and you shine a red light on them, and it's like, it's really, it distracts them. It blinds them temporarily so that you can run.
Yeah, I played that game before. Yeah.
Okay, so with all seriousness,
What's that?
with all seriousness and no silliness. Um, what's the point of life? Really, with all seriousness and no silliness.
The point of life is that there is no point, or that the point is constantly moving. I'm very serious about this.
Yeah, like cha 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 cha.
Stick your left cheek in, stick your right cheek in, shake it all about.
That
motorboat,
that is what it's all about.
It's the motorboat. Exactly.
It's the what?
The motorboating. You know what that is? Do you know what motorboating is? Stick your left cheek in, stick your right cheek in, shake it all about. Can you figure it out? You've never heard that expression.
Is motorboating a reference to marijuana smoking? Is it cheek like your cheek, like you're actually like filling your mouth with pot smoke? What are you talking about?
I'm talking about boobs. Boobs. Sticking your head in between two boobs. In this case, me and you are the two boobs because we're completely off. Motorboating is when you stick your head in between two boobs and you
right,
and you know. Yeah, that's what that is.
Oh, like right. Okay, I got that.
Yeah, sorry for being a boob, man.
Yeah, you know what? I think that when I was a 2-year-old, I was breastfeeding a lot when I was a 2-year-old. That's not true. And one of my favorite things to do was just stick my face right in front of between her. Have you noticed a lot of 2-year-olds motorboating? Because if not, I'm wondering what's so appealing about that. Do women like that? Is that what your kind of women like?
I have no idea. I didn't make the term up, right?
Have you tried it though?
No, I've never tried it. But it can be good as a stupid joke. As a foolish humor, absurd humor. If someone knows what the hell you're talking about, it usually helps. Because humor, interestingly enough, about humor is the context has to be understood by all that are listening. Otherwise, it's not very funny, is it? I'm trying to be serious.
Good. You should be. You should be more serious.
It's been like 2 minutes already, and I'm still very serious here. So.
Okay. Okay, so let's everybody take a deep breath, by which I mean Dan. So we're just going to be relaxed and calm here. And then, Dan, as we're concluding, I want to thank you for not only your last 2 years of putting up with me, but, the last couple of hours, I requested that Dan come on to join me and make this recording more fun and, of course, 3 times as long as it would have otherwise been.
Hot air? Yeah, okay.
Look, I already knew this stuff, man. I wrote it earlier today. So if I'm going to read it into a video, I might as well have Dan come and educate me about motorboating. So
see, now you know something new.
I learned something. I was like, you surprised me. I was ignorant, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I'm going to try that.
Just don't be ashamed, all right? Because you didn't have an expectation about motorboating.
I don't know if it's going to work. I mean, I'll try it, and somebody may be like, you know what? That's not really my thing. And I'll be like, okay, no problem, whatever.
Or maybe you
I'm talking about the next time when I go to the grocery store, I'm just going to, find somebody and try it out. What?
I've heard motorboating just south of the border sometimes isn't a bad idea. You know what I mean? But
I should tell you, I live in Arizona. There's not a lot of bodies of water here.
You got to make your own water with the motorboating, man. Come on.
Do you live near like Lake Erie?
A couple hours away. I'm a little bit south of the waistline. So.
Okay. Well, in conclusion, I thank you for your education and your sharing and your input and so on. Any concluding remarks to the potentially 6 people who are going to watch this video?
Well, I would just like to say thank you, JR. I've had a lot of fun, and I've definitely learned a lot more than you did. you got motorboating. I got a lot more out of this than that. So I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to, impress the 6 people with my great humor.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. Be sure to like this and share this video with your friend.
My one friend or 6 friends? I forgot how many I have now.
Oh. All right. So one thing that people sometimes do when they're transitioning from like hysteria to calm and alertness is they sigh. So
And laugh.
what?
And at the end of the process, they might even laugh about it all.
And they might laugh about it all. So that's a good thing, or at least that's a thing. And in some cases, it seems like a pretty attractive thing. So. Anyway, I'll conclude the recording. Dan and I will probably carry on with our jabbering for at least another 3 hours. But signing off, arrivederci and buenas motorboating. Buenas. How do you say that? Do you reverse the adjective when you're doing Spanish? Motor bueno boating. Goodbye.